Well,
Hello.
this is a very special class and a very unusual class. We have got Rachel Korazim, who is our dear friend and who has been to Temple Emmanuel many times to teach poetry before the pandemic, Israeli poetry. And she is at our home in Jaffa, and she is going to talk to us today about Israel. We're also with people in room 2425, and we're also with people online, and we're so grateful, Rachel, that you were with us. We want to just thank Dave Beckman, who's here, Brian Lefsky. They have been working around the clock to pull off this technological marvel, Rachel, that we have you. So, Rachel, we want to just really kind of have two texts here today. One is the text of your story. You were born in 1948. You live in Israel. You shared with us before the class started that you've been to 11 demonstrations in Tel Aviv, 11. We want to hear your take on what is happening, your understanding of why what is happening, your understanding of why a compromise cannot seem to be reached, and what this means for Israel. And then that's the text. So we're going to spend 15 minutes on the text of your biography, your life, your personal story, as an Israeli citizen, a lifelong Israeli citizen who's navigating this. And then you're going to teach us some poetry of Uri Tzvi Greenberg and Natan Alterman in the last half hour. So let's thank God for the gift of learning Torah together, and we'll get right into it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעשות בדברי תורה. והערב נא אדוני אלוהינו את דברי תורתך בפינו ובפי עמך בית ישראל. ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך ולמדי תורתך לשמה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. So Rachel, again, welcome and thank you. And why don't we just start by telling us what it's been like these last number of months since the election and since all the controversy about the judicial reform change and all the demonstrations. We just love your story.
Okay, so let me start my story by putting on a PowerPoint, because since COVID started, this is what I do most of the time: reach out, try to bridge distance of time and space to come with some honest, or at least as honest as I can make them, Israeli voices, and this is the same we are doing today. So I included a picture of your regular Talmud Torah on Shabbat and myself on the side, so that we are somehow included in the same area, all of us together. So this is what my study looks like, and I'm dressed a little bit differently on the picture, but very much the same person. What is this all about? It is, for me, about the Constitution of the State of Israel, a document that in most countries, such as yours, is presented for the public to view, and in Israel it's hidden in some archive and we only get to see a copy. And it states a few things that I'm afraid our current government, our current coalition, and each one of its factions, the ones who are ruling, there will be something in the Constitution and in the Declaration of Independence, in the lack of Constitution in Israel. This is the only document we have. And from it, I want to quote just one paragraph that you will find towards the end of the declaration. The State of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and for ingathering of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. If the new legislative upheaval comes up, there will not be for all its inhabitants. There will be differences between people who are of different religion, between people who are of different genders, between people who have different gender choices in their life. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace. No, there will be very curtailed freedom, as, for example, the freedom of occupation, the freedom of equality and justice. These are all elements that the new legislative wants to change, wants to eradicate from our system. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. No, that will not be the case. It will guarantee freedom of religion. Excusez-moi, under this new system, there will be even less freedom of religion for Jews who hope and want to practice Judaism in a way more closer to what you know of egalitarian Judaism, etc. You know about that. I don't need to spell it out to you. And a conscious language education through the law of the Chok HaLeom, the law of nation, or whatever you call it in English, that they have imposed already a few years ago. The Arabic language that was one of the two languages of the country is not that anymore. And education for major parts of our society do not include basic universalist tools and values. I mean, I'm out on the street there to maintain anything as close as what you so lovingly call the only democracy in the Middle East. Give me a break. It will not be that. So it's not about how exactly judges will be elected or chosen. It's not only about that lack of balance that they want between the three different authorities, you know, the legislative and the executive and the judiciary. We do not have those three because the government totally rules the Knesset. So between the legislative and the executive, already the borders have been erased. And if now this last border is going to be erased and the political rulers are going to rule over the judiciary as well, you will tell me that judges are elected by politicians in your country. Yeah, by all means, but you guys have a constitution. You guys have a separation of state and religion, of church. You guys have two houses in which debates are taking on. We have none of that. The only thing we do have is the judiciary. So we go out there, and it's personal. So what I wanted to do about the fact that it is personal is to share with you a few pictures. So let me take it from the right-hand side. This is Ophir, the son of my husband. He is not my son, but I am very close to him. Ophir just went into reserve after 25 years of serving as an F-16 combat pilot. I don't think that you can doubt his patriotism and loyalty to the state. He is now a strong, outspoken member of a group of reserve officers, not only of the Air Force, but of other parts of the military. And you can read maybe the word Achim on his T-shirt, and below it says Achim Leneshek, brothers in arms. And these are people who are working so very hard to reach out not only to the choir, as you guys say, but to reach out to their friends. And it's not a question of left and right anymore. And it's not a question of Ashkenazi and Mizrahi, and it's not a question of religious and non-religious, and settlers and non-settlers. It's a question of people who believe in democracy, in the right of running a state in a transparent, normal, democratic way. So Ophir is family. By the way, Ophir understood after so many years, and it doesn't matter how many years I tried to do that in my family, to explain the importance of reaching out to Jews who do not live in Israel, and to make this the business of the whole Jewish people and through members of your own community, and they know that, and I will leave them unnamed. I got help to help this group to reach out to Jewish American leadership to try and get as many people listen to these honest voices. Among the four pictures, the one on the left bottom is of myself and one of my students among the many hundreds who have studied with me on Zoom. in the last 3 years. We actually started exactly 3 years ago on March 15th, 2020. And she visits Israel right now, and she asked me to take her to the demonstration. She's 80 years of age. I am 77, and people like us are called by the people in power anarchists and terrorists. So this is the picture I have put on. Yeah. So it's an anarchist and a terrorist together. And this is from 2 weeks ago, and Suzanne is still in the country, but she's going to demonstrate in Jerusalem today. On the bottom right-hand side is my sister and my brother-in-law, Udi, and they are the very proud grandparents of my grandnephew. And what I want to do is show you him in performance. So, dear friends, you can see that in our family we start them early. We are out there on the street. So, Rabbi, I am watching the watch and the clock, and I know the time frame. So I can say many, many more things, but I'm choosing one. You phrased one of your questions to me by saying, why is compromise not possible? And I'd like to argue your choice of vocabulary. One does not compromise on democracy. This is not an issue of compromise. This is an issue of working together. Hold your horses. Put on the table the things that you think need to be addressed, as we have done through 74 and a half years of the State of Israel. And let us find a common language, and let us work towards the goal of making it better for all of us. Compromise is not my word of choice. Working together, listening to each other, that would be my choice. I hope I helped address this from the personal point of view. 3 more minutes in this part of our session. Let me answer an additional maybe comment or question from you, friends, back there.
Rachel, first of all, Rachel, oh my God, thank you, thank you. We are giving you a big hug and lots of gratitude. Just in the few minutes we have before we get to the poetry, how does this story end?
I'm scared, Wes. I'm honest to God scared. I could speak on the level of understanding the history of the Jewish people. We have a very bad tradition of messing up our independent and sovereign states after 75 years. And you know what I'm talking about. In the 8th decade of both earlier historical Jewish sovereign existence, we came into a fratricide, really. We came into hating each other. We came into civil wars, and we lost it all. I'm scared. I'm scared of the language on the street. I'm scared of the extremes. And I do hope, and now at this point I have become, if you wish, ironical or cynical, because in one of the elections, the party I never voted for, the Likud, had the expression, the slogan, Rak HaLikud Yechol, only the Likud can. I did not vote for them, ever. I'm not planning to in the future. But I honestly and truly believe at this point that only the Likud can. Among the representatives of the Likud in the Knesset, among their ministers in the government, there are decent people. There are people who know better. And they are the ones on whom the responsibility and the onus lies. They are in power. They hold everything in their hands. They need to make a difference within the Likud so these laws do not pass. We do not reach an impasse, but we start talking to each other. That's my hope.
Wow. Wow. Last question, and then we'll go to poetry. Today is Shabbat HaChodesh. We're thinking about Pesach coming. How does the world of Passover, Pesach, Yetziat Mitzrayim intersect with the complexity of Israel today?
Well, I sort of built that into my presentation.
Go for it.
Okay, because Chodesh Nisan is starting this coming week for all of us, both in Newton, Massachusetts, and in Yafo, Tel Aviv. So it was on my mind, not exactly Yetziat Mitzrayim, much more the Haggadah,
Okay.
but we will go for that. Is that okay?
That is perfect.
Yalla, let's go. So we are back to the PowerPoint, and we will take it from there with the time allocated to us. So descent and crisis in Israel today. My basic statement to you will be two things. A, we do have a history of descent and crisis, but what we are experiencing today can better be understood both in Israel and outside of it by digging deep into just the 75 years of the state and looking at four major questions, or four, just like in the Haggadah, just like the four brothers, just like the four questions, just like the 4 cups of wine that we are going to bless in very shortly, in about 2 weeks. There are more, but the people who created the Haggadah for us knew that there is just so much that the human mind can hold at the time, and they have decided that 4 elements we can handle. So let me suggest the following to you. A way to understand the descent and crisis that we are experiencing today will be by looking at the history of the state through the following 4 major issues. One is the crisis of the Altelena, 1948 June. I will explain everything. The descent between right and left in Israel is never disconnected from that event, to the effect of a newspaper article yesterday to that effect. The second one would be what our Arab citizens call al-Nakba, their disaster in 1948. If you want to understand why there are so few Arab citizens in the demonstrations, why we are so afraid to include the issue of the Arabs in the demonstration because it might scare away some people that we want the support of, go to the history of Al-Nakba, 1948-49. The third is crucially important, the events of Wadi Salib, 1959 Haifa, the first riots on the base of ethnic issues in Israel between immigrants from Morocco and the settled leadership of the land of Israel, Ben Gurion, namely, at the time. This is the first and the strongest, possibly, voice, and it still echoes. And the fourth, not to be neglected, the disengagement, 2006. If we do not understand the pain of these 4 events, we will never understand what is happening today, neither will we be able to start talking about ways to get out of them, because let me remind you, we have experienced these 4 crises and we lived after them and we continue to develop after them. So there must be a way for the contemporary as well. I cannot address all 4 issues. That would be totally incorrect as a teacher, as a person who chooses to make a point. I will go to the first. I think it's the deepest. I think it's one of the most painful ones. So let me take you.
Rachel, can we just pause for a second? This is so what the doctor ordered. This is so what we need. Want to just see if we can reserve your time for the next Shabbatot between now and Pesach, next Shabbat and April 2nd, so that you'll have enough time to do all of this content. This is what we need. You're what we need.
Okay, you will need to speak to Yossi. We have a family agreement that I do not work on Shabbat. But and this is the first time in all my years, and you know that I am not observant, and yet I do not work on Shabbat. But I will find out with Yossi if we can go along with that.
Okay.
So let us
To be
continue.
yeah.
We will work it out. We will find a way. He's not that difficult, Yossi.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. So I have chosen to start with the first. You were sent 3 poems in a session that I have given, because my whole semester coming up, starting last Thursday and continuing for 11 more sessions on Thursday, which is 2 p.m. your time. You get that information weekly, I trust, through Amy.
Yes.
And others in your congregation. We have looked at 5 poems. Because of the brevity of time, I suggested, Rabbi, that we look at 3, but I changed my mind, and I will do excerpts so that we can have a glimpse or a more complete idea, a more complete suggestion. My suggestion to you, my leading idea, the motto of this first presentation about Descent and Crisis, 1948, the case of Altalena and its root. Do not worry, I will explain what Altalena is. We're looking at 5 poems. I will send you all the texts, although members in your congregations have them from last Thursday. These are the ground-setting texts, as holy or unholy as any traditional text, that set the language, create the beginning of the debate. Rachel, a beloved poet, I taught to you many of her poems, beautiful love poems to the land, to real people, to her beloved Kinneret. There is not just one, but this is an exceptional poem from the year 1927, where splits between the just being created fighting force, namely the Haganah, and among them people who think that the Haganah, being guided by your Ben-Gurions, by mainstream labor Israel of the time or pre-state Israel of the time, is not strong enough. And they're pushing towards for ways and actions and violence that people like Rachel find unacceptable. The year is 1927. The Irgun will come into creation in about 3 years, in 1930. But the voices are there. And they have done something to which Rachel reacts. And she reacts by quoting a biblical text. You are in a synagogue, you can find it very easily. Open the 2nd book of Kings, chapter 7, verses 3 to 9, and you will read about an event where the city of Samaria, from the kingdom of Israel at the time, was surrounded by Aram, and then suddenly the Aram army disappeared, and the first people who find out about that are people who have tzara'at, leprosy, because they are out of the camp. And they see it, and they go like, wow, we need to tell the people. And Rachel writes, I'm doing just one line in Hebrew, "B'shekvar hayamim ha'oyev hanora et Shomron hevi b'matzor." For a long while the dreadful enemy laid siege to Samaria. 4 lepers brought tidings of freedom. And now she goes to the now of Eretz Israel in 1927, split between Jews about the way how to reach our goal of a sovereign state, how to make Zionism alive. Like Samaria and the siege, the entire land, the famine is too hard to bear. It's hard times here now as well. Maybe famine is metaphorical, but the Brits are ruling and the Arabs are rioting and all that. It's hard. But I will not want news of redemption if it comes from the mouth of leper. Let one who is pure bring news, and let the pure redeem. And if the pure proves unable, then let me die among the ravages of the siege on the eve of the great day of tiding. 4 years before she died, already sick and ravaged by disease, tuberculosis, She is crying out, I'd rather die than use ways that are improper. Rachel. Years go by. We go very quickly, but my suggestion to you would be that this is a ground text that we will keep referring back to as we do to the prophets who suggest the way to go. On July 23rd, 1946, there is a major event you don't need to remember. It is the bombing by the Irgun of King David Hotel. They wanted to hit the British command. They killed over 100 people, many of them innocent, Jews, Arabs, Brits. The Yishuv, again, the established Jewish population, your people of the mainstream, your Ben-Gurions, your Jewish agency, Haaretz for the paper, is just up in arms. It is a horrible thing, a great tragedy. And how do they express to their readership their pain, their anger at what had happened? If you go to the second page of the paper, you will find Rachel's poem. Rachel died in 31. This is 16 years or 15 years after she had died, and the poem reverberates. We don't want to go this way. Let's go proper ways, just ways, right, legal ways, not like that. So we have that echoing. I'm taking you back in time a decade between the passing of Rachel and this event to see how this atmosphere that allows the other ways is created. And for that we go to the year 1937, where Uri Tzvi Greenberg, the major prophetic, poetic voice of right-wing, revisionist, Jabotinsky, Eretz Israel, just came back from Galicia, his homeland, where he had made Aliyah earlier as a socialist pioneer, was disappointed with mainstream Zionist movement at the time because they had not reacted strongly enough by him at the time of the Arab riots, and he shifts to the right wing. He had to leave and go back to Poland, and then he will come in 1937 and publish poetry that he had written in the 30s. And I want you to listen to him very carefully, not before you pay attention to the title. One truth and not two, he says. So these are already, this is the voice of the people who will not concede to any idea but theirs. Just one, emet achat velo shtayim. And now he is talking to his readership. Your rabbis, don't take this literally. Rabbis could be Baruch Katzenelson, Ben-Gurion, Ade Gordon, any spiritual leadership at the time. Your rabbis taught a land is bought with money. You buy the land and work it with a hoe. And I say a land is not bought with money. And with the hoe you also dig and bury the dead. And I say a land is conquered with blood. And only when conquered with blood is it hallowed to the people with the holiness of the blood. And only one who follows after the cannon in the field thus wins the right to follow after his good plow. On this, the field that was conquered. Can you hear the voice that says, no JNF, no buying of land, no planting another tree and raising another cow, which was the voice of mainstream Zionism, the youth movements that many of you have been raised upon? No, he says, just fight, just the blood. Leave alone all these easy, peaceful ways. Your rabbis taught the Messiah will come in future generations, and Judea will arise without fire and without blood. It will rise with every tree, with every additional house, and I say, if your generation will be slow and will not grasp in its hand the forcibly mold in its future, and in fire will not come with the shield of David, and in blood will not come with the horses saddled, this Messiah will not come even in a far-off generation. Judea will not rise. I trust within rabbinic circles. I trust within Jewish philosophical debate and discussion. We have this tension between the idea of Messiah as a metaphor to work for, to build another house for, to do another act of tzedakah for, to build a community, to write a book. And the other end said, no, literally, bring Mashiach now. And we know the damage that had created in the history of Judaism. But the voice is there in the 30s in Eretz Israel. Do not believe in the peaceful base. No, Mashiach needs to be brought now. And you will be living slaves to every foreign ruler if you do not go my way, the one truth. Your houses will be straw for the sparks of every wicked one, and your tree will be cut down with the ripe fruit, and your stretched belly will be split by the enemy's hand, and the man will react in the same as a babe to the sword of the enemy, and only your rambling will remain yours, and your shameful committees in a book bindery, and your sculpted faces and eternal curse. Look at the mockery at debates and committees and book writing and the policy of scare. You'll die. Your rabbis thought there is one truth for the nations, blood for blood, but it is not the truth of Jews. Like you say, go by the way of the prophets, not by the others. And I say, there is one truth and not two. I'm not afraid from the ways of the nations. If one needs to kill, one will kill. And there is one sun, and there is not two Jerusalems. It was written in the law of conquest of Moses and Joshua until the last of the kings and the lions of the wounded. True, two exiles and traitors have consumed it. Okay, I know why you are like this. Because we have been in exile, once after the first temple, and then another time after the second temple, and then all those traitors who believe in the other ways. Just listen to the language of calling your opponent a traitor. And there will be a day when from the river of Egypt until the Euphrates, and from the sea until the mountain passes of Moab, my boys will go up. Can you see the borders? And they will call my enemies and my haters to the last battle, and the blood will decide who is the only ruler here. And I need for you to look at two terms, kibush, which in the English the translator has done conquest, but it's actually what we use today for the occupation. And look at the words, and the blood will decide who is the only ruler here. Listen to the words of one of the parties now in the government who talks about who is the only Balabait in the land of Israel. The representative in the government is now ruling over Israeli police. Okay? This is the language. It's not a political language of whatever, politicians that one may like or dislike nowadays. It has solid roots almost 100 years ago in the development or the split in Zionist thinking. The same writer.
Rachel, before you leave that poem, just so I get a sense of real Israel today, Mi HaShalit HaYachid Po connects with Mi Baal HaBayit Po, which is Ben Gavir's slogan. Who's the owner here? Who's the master of the house here? Could you give us a sense, how much traction does Ben Gavir have with the Israeli public? Like, if you have 100 points, how many Israelis hate his guts, and how many Israelis love him?
All the Israelis I know hate his guts, and all the ones who admire him I have very little contact with, but they are many. They were enough to create this government. And they, like in all countries that went through upheavals like ours, there is always a grand majority who believes in the strong man. And he represents the strong man. Bibi is not that strong nowadays. Okay? Listen further to Uri Tzvi Greenberg, again watching the time.
Okay.
he was critical of Kibbutz Mishmar Emek that during the riots of 1929 called for the help of the British police against the Arab rioters and did not fight single-handed. He thought that was a shame. And he criticizes them, but I want to look at two or maybe just one stanza here. Mishmar Emek. Mishmar Emek means, the name of that kibbutz means the guardians of the valley. And he is mocking them. Under Albion protective wings with the good fighting guns, one may refrain from stepping out to protect brothers falling into Arabia fishing net. Under Albion is written, protective wings, how convenient to forgive Arabia abomination. One can read a book or play music. One can also be a communist when one writes. So he is mocking the people who are writing poetry. He is mocking the people who are willing, even after riots, to seek out ways to negotiate and talk to the other side. He is mocking communists or socialists, etc. And go to the very last two lines. So if you are on your way to Mishmar Emek and you need directions, if anyone should ask where does the road lead, the respondent responds, Hefker HaEmek. He is changing the name of the kibbutz from Mishmar HaEmek to Hefker, to neglect, to lack of protection, etc. So the pain, the split between these ways of thinking exists. What was the thing that so enraged Uri Tzvi Greenberg? There was a poem at the time by Alterman called Do Not Give Them Guns. It was inspired by the fact that the last soldier wounded of a mustard gas in World War I had died in the mid-30s. And he recalls that, come here, please, nurse. He's speaking in the name of that dying soldier. Sit a while by me, lest I stop breathing and you never know. Here in this house, they died so quietly. I'm so cold all along. The night is still long, etc. And then he tells her the story of going bravely to war. I still remember, nurse, sky that is no sky, wind gusting over carpets of wheat. May it was more lush than all the maize Mother Earth had ever known. The battalions marched as if dizzied, like school children on holiday, etc. Old soldiers unstrapped their belts and inhaled sun and tobacco. And then he recalls the change. I can still recall, or nurse, that suddenly, all at once, terror came. We knew its smell, mustard. Mom was yelling, why are you hiding? Why, my child, do you wear a mask? And we jumped ahead into the storm. The gas mask made us look alike. I shot a small one in the skull and 3 big ones in the chest. I still remember, Neth. One need not forget. They were like me. They were good men. They just should not have been sent to battle. They just should not have been given guns. And he concludes, just one moment, nurse. I have 2 boys. 2. I love them so. They are good-hearted. But when one day comes, for heaven's sake, do not give them guns. In Eretz Israel of the 30s, these 2 ideologies conflict with each other. The ones seeking debate, the ones seeing the enemy as human, they were like us. The ones wanting to work towards peace and no need for wars, and the ones who say only by force, only by the gun. By the way, this has beautiful music that I will play for you some other time. This is the backdrop of what will happen when the War of Independence starts. And here is your quick timeline for that. So you know the major dates. The UN petition, Ben-Gurion declares the state. There was a phase of war under the Brits still that we call the Civil War. Then comes the true War of Independence. And in it, you have all these phases. At the very beginning, May 1st, 2 weeks after the declaration of the state, Ben Gurion will sign an agreement with the Irgun for one army under one command of the provisional government. At that time, a truce is declared between the Arabs and Jews, the first truce of the War of Independence. And Ben Gurion thinks it's very important that everybody obeys, include the Irgun. The Irgun has a boat on the way with weapons, arms, and immigrants that had left already France, unbeknown to Begin. They sign an agreement, since we now have the truth, since we now have the agreement between the Irgun and the IDF, that arms will be handed over to the IDF, with a portion given to the Irgun fighters in Jerusalem. This, you can read about it if you just go on Wikipedia, Altalena, it pages and pages of the details. But the truth of the matter is that because of secrecy, so the UN doesn't know that we bring in guns during the truth, they are sent to Kfarvitkin, or north of Tel Aviv, where they were supposed to hand over the guns. It does not happen. Already a battle breaks out between IDF and the Herzog. Then they try to shift the boat to Tel Aviv, and still they are not responding to the Ben Gurion ultimatum. And finally, Ben Gurion gives the order to shoot at the boat because he knows that the country needs one army, one command, working under legal roots and not for political militia to have their own arms. That creates a true fighting battle in which 10 Herzog members and 3 IDF soldiers are killed. That's an open wound. Had that not been enough, Alterman is writing a poem about it called The Burning of the Weapons. You can see the image. This is June of 1948. As we are watching the Altalena sink with all the guns on it. By the way, the immigrants descended from the boats in Kfarvitkin. They were not on the boat at this point. In front of the pillar of fire that rises from the sea, in front of the gunboat aflame on the water, let the smoke of the writing of those who cry shame and wring their hands dim our eyesight. Let not them. We should not listen to that. Let the people stand motionless and know as they face the fire that these weapons are not burning in vain. They performed their duty to the fighting nation. They served. Their burning means the victory of the nation's desire over the desire of the herd. Alterman is calling the government the nation and the faction of the Irgun a herd. It's painful. They served. Their burning means it's right to establish authority and preserve order. Let me add to the complication that when Ben Gurion gives the order to shoot at the boat, by the way, there were soldiers who refused to shoot. Begin, who was on the boat, refused to respond, yet there was shooting from the boat. In spite of what Begin said, there was shooting from the land. It was intended to scare and not to hit, but one of the shots hit. The person who is in command of the unit on the coast that shoots at the boat is Yitzhak Rabin. That is never, ever forgotten by right-wing Israel. To this day, the wound is open. It's there for us to remember. I don't want to pretend any objectivity. I would have been with the Ben Gurion and the Rabin side at that time, but I do understand the pain. Perhaps these are minor things, says Alterman, but today they are the rampant of the Jewish state. Therefore, the posters in the city proclaiming in vain, shameful is the day of burning weapons. No, Cairo watches the cloud of smoke, and Damascus and the man watch well. They shiver watching it from the cloud, the stone-faced people, tired yet confident, who see the burning of their most precious tools and remember that the end game is victory. Give up the guns at this time so that we maintain a state that is under the law. Cairo and Damascus will hang their heads again. Another of their cherished hopes is going up in smoke. There was a cause, there was a government, there was a faction that disobeyed, and yet the wound is open. On the coast of Tel Aviv, on the beach, you can see a monument to the Altelena. It tells the whole story. It's not hiding it. And no matter where I am politically, every single time I walk by, I will stop at the monument of the Altelena because we need to remember. So let me conclude here my remarks by saying we have a history. It cannot be denied. It needs to be remembered. And part of the understanding of what is going on right now is to bear in mind our past. This is just part of it. Thank you, dear friends. I'm done.
Wow, Rachel, thank you so much for your learning and your erudition. Truly, nobody does what you do, and we're so grateful. I would say that the next step is more. So hopefully, if Yossi will permit it, and if your schedule will permit it, we would love to continue the learning next week. You put out 4 different categories that you have to understand today. The first one was Altalena. We could have a whole class just on Altalena, but we'll pick up, if you can, we'll pick up with the second one. And we just send you all of our love and all of our gratitude for this incredible teaching.
It's not, I don't need Yossi's permission, but it's a way that we have agreed on, and I want to talk to him about it.
I understand.
Let me know do what I want. It's not about permission, but I want that to be discussed at least between the two of us.
Of course.
Thank you so
Rachel,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of love and Shabbat Shalom. We're so grateful to you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.